Again, it's Janelle Livens. I'm glad you're all here. And tonight we have a great topic. I'm very excited about it. It is all sides of the stress coin, how different types of stress help you or hurt you. And before I get started, if you would just drop your name in the chat box and say where you're from, that would be great, because part of having this Facebook group is building community. And so you might just say Janelle from Brentwood or whatever in the chat box. So I see some people have already joined. So if someone could just give me a sound check. Michelle, can you tell me, can you hear okay? Hala? Debbie? Okay, good. All right, so leadership minds and matters. You know, we talk about all things here that help optimize your life, whether that's at home or work. We have people in our group who are leaders of companies or lead teams in different offices or lead community groups or people who lead their households. So whatever role that you have, know that what we share here tonight can help you at home and at work. All right, so if you have any specific questions, also please just make a note of them, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of what I want to share with you tonight. So I want to make sure we have time to do that. All right, a lot of times in this group, I have talked a lot about stress. But what I'm talking about tonight is different. And I've also shared a lot about how meditation is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful antidote to stress. And I'm going to cover that a little bit later too. You know, and certain level of stress can be very helpful for us, right? It gets us out of bed in the morning. It encourages us to get things done on time. But when we tip over the stress scale and when we stay in a state of too much stress, that's when we put ourselves in situations that could really be harmful to our health, our emotional health, our mental health, and our physical health. And I'm going to cover all of that tonight. I always say that if you could see stress, I think people would willingly take action to eradicate too much stress in their life, but it's invisible. And the reality is we just kind of deal with it and we get used to how it feels, right? I know I did that myself until I had my own health crisis 12 years ago. So I totally get it. But I don't want anyone here to have a health crisis. And that is really what drives me a lot to talk about this topic, so that you can be proactive in managing stress so that you do not put yourself in a situation that I found myself in 12 years ago, having had a health crisis to get my attention. But unfortunately, that's where a lot of us land. All right, so let's talk first about acute stress. Now, acute stress is the most common, and it's something that a lot of us kind of deal with every day. It is a very short term stress. Now, there's some acute stress that can be very exciting and bring joy to our life. Like we may be planning to have visitors for the weekend, and we have a lot of activities that we're very excited about seeing people, but it also takes a lot of work, and that can be kind of stressful. It's a short period of stress. Another example might be you've got a major deadline and you're working really hard to make that deadline happen on time, right? And that can be stressful, but then it's over. It's a more manageable stress. And another example would be, and I love this one, let's say you want a ticket to drive a really fast race car, and it was something you always wanted to do. So you go to the track, you turn in your ticket, you get in the car, you feel the steering wheel, and you're driving the car at 150 miles an hour, and it's really exciting and thrilling until you realize there's some curvy roads coming up, and we start tipping over from that really positive kind of stress surge to a place of getting really scared, like you don't have the skills to do this, right? And then you're like, a lot of anxiety starts to happen and you don't even know how to turn this car off. It's so fast, but you do figure it out and then you decompress. But even with that short-term stress, a lot of times what can happen is that you can have physical symptoms as a result of it kind of going from a manageable short-term experience to something that gets kind of haywire and, oh my gosh, what do I do now, right? And so some of those symptoms, and I've got some notes here, I want to make sure I give you the right symptoms based on my research, can be things like you start to feel really anxious. You could feel really irritable, for an example. You could have headaches. You could have stomach upset. You could feel dizzy. Maybe you could really feel or hear your heart beat. It's like heart palpitations faster, or shortness of breath. So just know that if you have those kinds of symptoms, those are normal. And the good news is this is a short time that we have acute stress. So it doesn't linger and it doesn't carry on. That said, if you find yourself in situations that started out positive and then, like driving the race car and it became a little frightening and scary, you just need to do something to discharge that stress and to reset your sympathetic nervous system, which would be something like taking deep breaths, right? And that would put you back into a neutral state. But again, this is something we experience every day. It's just kind of like part of life, normal stress type of thing. Okay, and it's very helpful in small doses. Hey, James, thanks for joining. All right, and Debbie. So now I want to talk about one that I don't hear people talking about a lot, and it's called episodic acute stress. And that's when we have too much acute stress, that short period of stress, too often. All right, now this type of stress is usually seen by people that you might describe as having type A personalities, right? And they're kind of running around, the life seems a bit chaotic, they always have far too many things on their plate. And I don't know if anybody listening can relate to this or not, but good, because what I'm going to share with you might be helpful. They might describe themselves as people who just have a lot of nervous energy and can almost show up with an attitude of, this is just who I am and I get a lot of stuff done, and yet their life is kind of, chaos, right? So they can, with that kind of perspective, folks who are really suffering with episodic acute stress can come across in a way that is not as pleasant. They can be viewed as being overly aggressive, overly competitive, hostile even, right? And demanding. And that can really spill over into their behaviors and their communications with other people, which can then damage relationships, of course, unintentionally. So that can impact their life at home, their life at work, can limit career opportunities, and eventually show up as some major health problems. So you can see where this episodic acute stress can really lead to maybe not even enjoying life so much while you're in it, and also future problems. And some of those symptoms that people who are experiencing episodic acute stress are more anxiety, longer periods of depression, ceaseless worrying. These are the people who would self-describe themselves as the worry warts, right? They just worry about everything all the time, right? And even can lead to things like coronary heart disease or other types of heart problems, right? So, hey, Anne, I'm glad you could join. So episodic stress is different from the next one I want to talk about, which is chronic stress, because episodic acute stress does stop time to time, but not as frequently as acute stress, right? So acute stress is sort of that short surge of stress that's manageable. I can fix this. I can reset myself by taking some deep breaths and move on, where the episodic stress is sort of continuous burst of stress, right? Just all day long, from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. And these people don't sleep so well either. Now let's talk about chronic stress. And I'm going to spend more time on the chronic stress because it's the opposite of acute stress. It is manageable if you decide to take action to manage it. What happens when we're in a state of chronic, never-ending stress is that it actually becomes our new normal. We acclimate to it. We get used to how it feels. And that is really dangerous. Hey, Rodney, I'm glad you could join us. So, that's something that I really want to highlight tonight, because unhealthy chronic stress literally tears little pieces of us apart mentally, physically, and emotionally. And a lot of times we don't even know it's happening. Not only do we not know it's happening, we're completely clueless as to how this chronic stress of never-ending stress is going to be impacting our future self, our future health, mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? And it's really challenging to even think about that. So I think a lot of this shows up later in life, and that's a whole nother conversation. Now, chronic stress happens when you have long-term exposure to stressors, such as a traumatic experience, whether if it was a long time ago, maybe it was never dealt with, right, with a mental health counseling or something, or an unhappy marriage, or a job that you just don't even want to get up and go to, or a career that you want to leave. That's the kind of stress we're talking about, heavy, heavy stuff, right? This leads to, it could be something like, maybe in a state of poverty, that creates chronic stress. Maybe it's ongoing illnesses that a person's having to manage, relationship conflicts, or dysfunctional family dynamics. These things that go on for years and years and years that you hear about can really keep you in a state of chronic, never-ending stress. And this is just like the danger zone. If you're feeling like I'm stuck, if you're feeling like, this just never ends, I don't get a break, this accumulation of stress never goes away, the effects can be really life-threatening and can really lead to severe depression. It can lead to people feeling violent, to harming themselves, or even suicide. So this is the one we really want to take very, very, very seriously. So some common physical symptoms are things like dry mouth constantly, right? Difficulty breathing, rapid heart palpitations again, stomach aches a lot of the time, frequent headaches, tightening of the muscles, right? Also things like, if you find yourself just really irritable more than normal and you don't even know why, or easily agitated over little things that just shouldn't even bother you perhaps, if you're not sleeping night after night after night, if you're feeling tired a lot of the time, that's another symptom of chronic stress, or you're unable to focus or concentrate on anything. And I could go on and on and on, but those are some of the major symptoms. So I want to highlight those because I really want to ask you to just do a check-in. And if you're experiencing any of these, I'm going to get to what you can do about that. Chronic stress just wreaks havoc on our mind and our body and soul. And again, the scariest thing about it is that we get used to it. Or we just think, hey, everybody's got stress, I can manage this. If I just woman up or man up, I can deal with it. And our body is really hardwired to protect us, right? I mean, back in the cave times, our amygdala was always on alert. So just imagine if your body under chronic stress is always under alert and always feeling threatened, the wear and tear that takes on you mentally, physically, and emotionally. It's a lot, and you're just not equipped to handle that 24/7. So, if the stressors are always present, if we always have that fight or flight activated, things start to break down. And it just puts us in an increased state of risking things like health problems with, severe depression, digestion problems, greater levels of anxiety, more headaches, heart disease, sleep problems I mentioned, gaining weight, memory and concentration problems. So it's serious. It's really, really serious. And so the cost of chronic stress is very, very high. Some people become so debilitated with chronic stress, they can't even function at work, and they may lose their job. And if they're under a lot of stress at work, well, that's going to naturally spill over to bringing that home, and that's going to show up in how you behave and how you communicate, and that's going to hurt your closest relationships with your family and friends. So even if you deny that this is going on, it's going to leak out. It's going to leak out because you're not going to be able to function at the same level, and that's going to make you even more stressed, and that's going to translate into damaging your relationship. So for all these reasons and more, it's really important that we all not deny when we're under severe stress, chronic stress, never-ending stress. I never get a break. I'm always stressed. I'm always, rushing and trying to manage what I know is not healthy for me. And how we react to stress depends on a lot of factors, things like genetics, our life experiences. Have we had trauma or not? our level of resiliency, our outlook on life, our attitude, our perspective. And if we've had any stress management skills, courses, or anything like that that we've taken, or even a meditation class, to have in our toolkit to give us something to help alleviate the stress, whether it's the episodic acute stress or chronic stress. So it's just super important. And you know what? Stress is never going to not be in our life. I mean, it's a fact of life. And you may not be able to change your current situation, and I get that, but you can learn to acknowledge it first, and to then learn how, learn some skills for how to better manage when you do feel those symptoms of stress. And when you have dry mouth, when your heart feels like it's racing, and just to be aware of that and to tell yourself, okay, this is happening. These symptoms are coming up, to get my attention. And you don't want to continuously have those symptoms that will lead to something much, much more serious, right? Now, you can also learn what are the root causes of your stress, and which of those things can you delete from your life. Maybe it's the job, maybe it's a relationship. I don't know, only you would know, but there is a time that sometimes we have to just really take a look at our life and say, what are those things that keep triggering me, that keep me in this constant state of fight or flight? And what actions do I need to take to address it? Now, I know that's not an easy conversation, but it's important to do that before you go down a path of really having some kind of irreversible, heart damage or some problem as a result of stress. And I've worked with a lot of people who have suffered from chronic stress. And many of them tell me that the problems that they've had, everything from strokes to cancer to heart attack, has been because they knew that they were living in a state of chronic stress, but they didn't know what to do about it, or they chose to deny it. They downplayed it. And I get that, but we have to change that mindset about stress. So let's see. Now, the payoff for learning how to do all this, how to manage stress, is really a peace of mind. And that's, I think, what we all deserve to have, is an inner peace that we go about enjoying our life, because this is it, right? It's not the dress rehearsal. This is our life. This is the moment that we're living. We're present. This is our life. And so everybody deserves to have a long, healthy, beautiful life. And we have to just, as I said, I think, change our level of acceptance about having too much stress in our life, because we don't have to accept it. And everyone deserves to live a life with that sense of centeredness and calmness and inner peace. And the great thing is there are ways to do it. Now, some people might want to work with a therapist or work with a coach to learn some of these skills, whatever they feel is, appropriate. But if you're struggling with managing too much stress, especially chronic stress, then I may be able to help you. We can set up a call, and I'll post a link here, and we'll talk for 10 or 15 minutes. And if I can help you, I will certainly do my best to refer you to somebody who can. But it is an area that I actually do work in and help people with in managing chronic stress through mindfulness and meditation and mindset work and a myriad of other techniques. Now, some of you have asked about just learning how to meditate. And I have been talking the last couple of weeks about our first ever online meditation class. It kicks off tomorrow night at 7:30 Central, and I'm very excited about it. We have a great group that's going to come together on Thursday nights for 1 hour, just for the month of August. And if after what we talked about tonight, if you're saying, you know what, I think I want to learn how to meditate, and I'm going to invite you to reach out to me, I will still get you in the class up until tomorrow afternoon, because I'm all prepared for it. So we'll just set you up with that. And I'll post the link to that as well. So just in conclusion, I'm so passionate about sharing the negative impacts of too much stress in our life. And I don't want people to have a health crisis like I experienced 12 years ago. That was my wake-up call. I don't want you to have a wake-up call. There's no need to have it, right? You can take what I've said today, think about it, and do your own self-check. How are you doing in managing stress in your life? And maybe you're doing great, and if so, fantastic. But I know for a lot of people, this is an issue. And I think it's an issue in our country and probably in the world, right? Stress will always be part of our lives. It's a matter of having the knowledge and tools to be able to manage it when we know we're in different, experiencing different types. So those three types again are the acute stress, which is the short-term, manageable, treatable kind of stress, the episodic acute stress, which is when we have too much of that short-term stress too often, and then chronic stress, which is really in the danger zone. That's when we really start to experience symptoms that I just went through of, rapid heart palpitations, constant fatigue, irritability, depression, having lots of negative thoughts. It's a very dark place. And so that's where we really can set ourselves up for having some future problems. And I want to avoid that for you. So, hey, Heather, thanks for joining. So let me take a breath and see if anybody has any questions over here in the chat box. And if you do, you can just type your question in and I will do my best to answer it. Yeah, so I think that's everything that we covered. So if you want to learn about meditation, our class kicks off tomorrow night, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, 1 hour, and I can set you up with that. We just have to schedule a quick call sometime tomorrow, and I'll post the link to do that. All right, any questions, guys? Yeah. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Thank you for coming. I know this was a lot, but I think it's important to kind of understand these different levels, and that the good thing about stress too, the acute stress, hey, it can really add some spark, to our life. Sometimes that little adrenaline pump is just happiness, right? We feel great. So I hope this has been helpful. Please reach out to me if there's anything I can do to help you in living your best life. Hey, Debbie from Delaware. Great. All right, guys, that's it. Next week, we'll have another topic. And thanks so much to everyone. This was a great group tonight. I think it's our largest crowd ever. So thanks so much. And I will, this replay will stay up. So if you do have some questions later, I do check it and we'll come back. And I'll also post it on our page. So if you want to share it to someone in your life that you think may be struggling with stress and maybe it would be helpful for them to hear it. You may be talking to them about trying to decrease stress in their life. And sometimes we hear it from somebody else, and it sounds different, right? All right. That's it for me tonight. Thanks so much for showing up. Take care. Bye-bye.